Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. I just am here to talk a little bit about Amy Murphy Racing and how I started in the industry, and sort of a bit about my background. Please do fire away any questions you have. As you can imagine, it's only on me on here, so it will really help if somebody has some questions. Please send them across in the chat box and I'll try and answer them the best possible way I can. So I am obviously Amy Murphy and I train here in Newmarket on Hamilton Road, very close to the Rolling Mile. And sort of I'll probably start from the very scratch, really, is the best thing to do. So I was brought up on my father's national hunt stud. It was a small stud. We sort of had 5 or 6 brood mares, but basically throughout my childhood I rode ponies and was sort of horse crazy, you know. School was always very much second best to anything equine, and you know, I just lived, breathed, slept, you know, and ate horses. Any spare minute I had before and after school was spent out in the stable yard, which was, you know, a fabulous way to serve my childhood, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Don't get me wrong, there was plenty of thrills and spills along the way, as I imagine everybody has with naughty ponies. So yeah, basically my sort of childhood was pony club, show jumping, eventing, hunting, a bit of everything, bit of an all-rounder. My pony, you know, some days on a Saturday would be out with the local hunt, and on a Sunday I'd have him at a dressage test at the local equine centre. So he was definitely what you call an all-rounder. But as soon as I was sort of old enough to ride out, you know, that was at about the age of 14, I started to ride out for my local trainers, which were John Mackey and Eddie McMahon, because we were based in Staffordshire. And you know, pretty much from my Saturday mornings spent with them and my school holidays, I very quickly got bitten by the racing bug and was sure that is what I wanted to do. So off I, you know, went into racing at, you know, pretty much as soon as I came out of school, I went to Hartbury College and did equine science at Hartbury College until I was 18. But in that whole time, I very much, you know, rode out for the Nicky Henderson and Dr. Richard Newland. As you can imagine, from those types of national hunt guys, I learnt quantitous amounts, more than you could ever imagine. And then from the time that I graduated at Hartbury College in Gloucester, I then was very lucky to secure a pupil assistance job with Tom Dascombe up in Cheshire. Tom was incredibly good to me, because obviously at that, you know, I was still young and sort of inexperienced in the racing industry. So he was incredibly good to take me under his wing and teach me everything that he could, to prepare me for sort of, you know, the world as an assistant trainer at a later date. I was very lucky in the sense that with Tom, I got lots of sort of responsibilities along the way, you know, going racing sort of 2 or 3 times a week on his behalf, spending sort of summers in France at Deauville, because he used to base a team of, you know, a small team of horses at Deauville for the summer festival there throughout July and August. So I was very lucky that I got the chance to spend some time there as well. After I'd done I think 2.5 years with Tom, I then decided I wanted to broaden my horizons a little bit and went to Gay Waterhouses in Australia and did 6 months there. And as you can imagine, you know, she's just the most fabulous woman and the best mentor you could ever hope for. And what she doesn't know is not worth knowing. You know, I learned an awful lot from Gay. And then after it was quite funny. Mr. Kamani here in Newmarket was at the time looking for a pupil assistant. Pupil assistant. So I applied for the job, not thinking I would probably get it. And then, you know, he called me whilst I was out in Australia at Gaze and kindly offered me the job, but it was to start in 2 weeks. And I, at this point, I hadn't even had the discussion with Gay that I was thinking about going back to England. So I, of course, the next morning went straight back up to the office after morning stables at Gay's and said, I've got myself in a spot of bother. I applied for a job, not thinking I would probably be good enough to get it, and have been offered it. So, and luckily, she was very understanding and said, I already know you've got the job. And so I obviously panicked and said, oh no, why? And Mr. Kamani had called her and asked for a reference for me. So she said I needed to get on the next plane, jump at the opportunity, and those opportunities don't come around very often. So there I was 2 weeks later, starting at Bedford House here in Newmarket, and had the most fabulous 3.5 years based here with Mr. Kamani, initially as pupil assistant, and then when Matt moved on to go and set up training in Australia, I took over the assistant's role for 2 years afterwards. And again, an unbelievable person to learn from. I mean, his attention to detail is just second to none. He misses absolutely nothing that's ever going on in and around. Even if you think he hasn't seen it, he's seen it and noted down whatever it might be, whether it be to do with a horse, a member of staff, or whatever's going on in the yard. And I think that's something I've definitely taken away with me now. My staff will regularly say something like, it could be happening at the 8 furlong marker and I'm at the 4 furlong marker on the gallop, for example, and they'll go, how did you see that? And I think, that's probably because he installed that in me, you don't necessarily need to say anything, but you watch and take note of everything that's going on around you. And you need ears and eyes everywhere. And I think that's something, because as a trainer, you can't be everywhere. So you need to be surrounded by a great team, a great management team. And that's what I'm very, very fortunate to be in the position of now. So I left Mr. Kamadi's and set up training in 2016. And then here we are sort of going into our fifth season. I've been incredibly lucky to have a fantastic team of owners, a team of staff. The trainer is only their head of the throne, should you say. It's, I couldn't do it without each and every member of staff I have behind me, whether it be Kat and Claudia in the office, or, my head team, my partner, Lamos de Souza, who's an integral part of the team, both work riding and sort of we do quite a lot of the race planning together. So now I'm just backed up by some really good people, and very lucky to have some great owners on board who have been, most of the owners that were with me at the sort of start 5 years ago are still here, and we're having great success together, and hopefully it can long may it continue. That's probably as much as I sort of have to say about myself. It's not easy talking about yourself. But please fire away any. I'll be in the chat and fire away any questions. I see one has already come in. I'm just going to click on now. So the question is, working with Tom Dascombe and Luca Kamani, how do they differ in training styles, and if they do at all? I think every trainer you ever work for will do things slightly different. Although we're all trying to get the horses to the same point and to cross that line in front, I think everybody has a different way of doing it. And I think I'm very much the same as well. I sort of would like to think I've taken bits from Tom's, from Gay's, from Mr. Kamani's, and combined them all in one. So I would, in terms of Tom and Luca, I would say Tom probably has, you can only train the horses that you're given. And I would say, although Tom is very good at training any horse, he was probably more given precocious 2-year-olds and sprinters, sort of 7 miles. So Brown Panther, Rhythm of Light were there. So it just shows, he could train middle distance horses just as well as he could train sprinters. But I think whereas Mr. Kamani would probably be more known for his middle distance horses. So I think he probably, in terms of distances, then Mr. Kamani would gallop over more sort of 7 furlongs to a mile, whereas at Tom's our fast work would a lot of the time be sprints. So different things like that. And I suppose it's the facilities you have as well. We at Tom's, we had sort of spas and equine swimming pools, vibration plates. So we had lots. We were very lucky in the sense that Michael Owen has set up a fabulous facility for horses, and because of the football side. I think Michael very much saw the need for the rehab of injuries and things like that, and obviously that's why he has the vibration plates and the spas and the equine swimming pools, which I know now, in 2021, quite a lot of people have those types of things. But 7-8 years ago, vibration plates weren't heard of. Tom already had those types of things already in place. So, and I think Michael was installing things that he would have seen from him as a footballer and preventing his injuries and things like that. Having the spas, they were certainly in the yards I've worked in, didn't have those types of facilities. So I think it really is a lot to do with what you have. And you look at the flip side of that is obviously Tom's got a couple of gallops to work with, whereas you train here in Newmarket and you've got vast quantities of gallops to access. For example, this week we've probably used 5 different gallops. We've had the jumpers up the grass, we've had the flat horses up the grass, but they will all train at different distances. And then you've got other horses that are just coming back into work from their winter break, so they're just doing steady canters on the round canter. So whereas if I actually trained in sort of a facility where is out of Newmarket, I would be training all those types of horses on 1 or 2 gallops, whereas here I can differentiate. That's your fast work gallop, that's your slow work gallop, that's your maintenance work gallop. We're incredibly lucky to have that sort of choice of gallops and choice of surfaces. And I know for a fact that I've got some horses that like one all-weather gallop but don't like the other all-weather gallop. And whereas if I was training outside of Newmarket, I wouldn't have that option. It'd be, there's your gallop, like it or lump it, you've got to learn to deal with it. Whereas if I know I've got a horse that might get jarred up on a certain poly track and is better trained on a deeper track, then I'll go and I have the access to do that. Whereas, or if I've got a tricky filly that doesn't like a particular canter, I can offer her a different canter that she might get on with better. So I think that is the great luxury that we have here in Newmarket. I hope that helps a little bit. There's just another question from Simon Bailey. What's the best piece of advice that you've been given regarding becoming a trainer? I think certainly when I was learning to become a trainer, or even now, it doesn't differentiate. It was to keep your mouth closed and keep your ears open, and it is taking as much as you can. And I think I still adopt that approach today. Sometimes I won't necessarily say anything, but I'll sit and absorbed every little bit of information, whether it be a jockey or a member of staff post a fast piece of work. I'll go away and I'll be analysing what they've just said to me for the next few hours, and I might not have said anything at that time, but once I've gone away and thought about it, same for if a vet's giving me some advice, don't necessarily do this with that horse, or that horse could do with another easy day, because he's still, although he's coming back from an injury, he's still niggling and not 100%. So, you know, I think it is taking every bit of information, and you learn. I learn something new every day. You know, you learn from your mistakes. You know, there's as we've gone along between Lemos and I think, you know, we're pretty good at learning what we did wrong and not doing it again. And I think, you know, that you'll never stop learning whatever aspect you're at throughout your training career. Just got a few more. What is my favorite horse of all time, and what is your favorite horse you've been involved with? I think favorite horse of all time. I mean, I was incredibly lucky to be involved with Postponed throughout his career with Mr. Kamani. I used to ride him most days, and yeah. So I think in terms of a horse that's given you the experience of a lifetime, he was I may be lucky to work with a horse as good as him in my entire career. So I think he certainly, and he was a great character as well. You know, he wasn't easy. He could be a bit of a cheeky boy in the box, and you know, he wouldn't let everybody do anything with him. So he was, yeah, you know, he taught me an awful lot, and just incredibly lucky to be involved with a horse of that caliber. And now, excitingly, we can hopefully follow his progeny. In terms of my favorite horses, I mean, if I probably of the flat horses, a horse called, you know, she wasn't necessarily a world beater, but a horse called Happy Odyssey really put us on the map. You know, and I'm not, you know, I'm not saying she's my favorite. I mean, as in, I'm incredibly lucky to have had her, and she really did great things for us. And she actually helped me buy the yard we're in now, because I owned half of her, and after she won her listed race in France, we sent her to the Arcana sales that they have on Arc weekend, and she made, you know, she made good money, and it meant that we was, you know, able to buy, or, you know, put the deposit down on Southgate Stables where we are now. So, you know, she obviously holds a special place in my heart. I'm terrible. I mean, I could go through the whole lot. I go around with packets of polos every day and spend my whole life, you know, whether they, you know, they're not all world beaters, but the biggest thing for you could ever do is get a horse on your side and get them to try for you, because that's the biggest part of training. If they don't want to do it, doesn't matter how good or bad they are, they won't do it. So you've got to keep, you know, my motto is keep your horses happy, and they'll try, and they'll do their best for you, and that's what we try to do here. You know, our horses all get turned out every day. You know, they go out to exercise for an hour, and then they go out in the paddocks for an hour to 2 hours every day after exercise. And you know, I think it's great for them, great for their mentality, and you actually see them enjoying themselves. You know, I couldn't think of anything worse than a horse being stuck in a stable for 23 hours a day. And we try to do very much the opposite here. I mean, we have some horses that live outside full time, you know, horses that might have a vice, or you know, have a respiratory issue. We're fortunate in the fact that we, you know, they can live outside with shelters. They, you know, some horses don't like a stable environment, and that's fine. You just have to get inside their heads and work out what it is that they want. So yeah, no, I think we're very fortunate, and they're more like pets here than they are race horses. Another question: what has been the biggest challenge of your career so far? Obviously, training race horses, keeping them healthy, is naturally a big challenge, you know, and the health part is one of the biggest challenges. You know, because if you haven't got a healthy yard, if you've got horses coughing, if you've got horses, you know, with a snotty nose, you won't get the results, and this is a results game, and you can very quickly be forgotten. So it's incredibly important to keep your horses healthy. and we've been, touch wood, very, very fortunate in that sense, that we had one period in our second year training where they were just, for the best part of 4 months, they weren't well. I couldn't, whatever I did, we kept changing antibiotics, and they kept, disinfecting everything in the yard, disinfecting the stables, and they just kept repeatedly having this, short continuous cough and sniffles, and we just couldn't get them healthy, and it was just awful because there was no point running them. I knew they weren't right and they weren't going to be able to perform, and then you'd get a week down the line and think, oh, okay, we're okay, we're back on track. So you'd run one to see if you're all right, and then that horse would be traveling great and then just fall in a heap. So they clearly still weren't right. And that 4 months felt, because obviously I was very early in my career, I wanted to sort of keep the ball rolling because we'd had such a good first season, and whatever we did, we couldn't, no matter how hard we tried, it was just, they needed time. And then literally just 1 week came, we'd changed the hay, we'd changed several things to try and get them back on track. And then suddenly just 1 week came, and everything changed. We could hardly sit on them. They were bucking, kicking, and they were fighting to go. So it was just, it was just, and that taught me a lot. It meant that it was, all I needed to do was be patient, but because I wanted things to happen, I was trying to change this, that, and the other to make them healthy again, when actually it was just a bit of time that was needed. And then they suddenly came right, and literally the next 3 weeks everything won. We went through a sort of a purple patch, and they came back to health, and touch wood, we haven't had that situation again. But yeah, so I think the biggest challenge of a trainer is keeping the horses healthy and as injury free as you can. And obviously you look at something like Kalashnikov, things were going fabulous. He'd won his grade 1, and then boom, the next season we're dealing with a horse that's had unfortunately a terrible bleed at Newbury, and I wasn't sure walking away from the racecourse that day that we would ever see him on a track again. And through patience and nurture and lots of TLC, we've now got him back to the point where he's not even bleeding at all. There's nothing. He is completely 110% touch wood healthy. He's got through 3 races this year, which again, we're nursing him back into the big sort of big frame. But we've dropped him in his races. We've given him time. Because it's a confidence thing with him. He's had a scare at the racecourse, and he might remember that. So we have to take him back and say, hold his hand almost, and say, you're okay. And now that we're 3 races down the line, you could really see at Newbury the last day that he actually jumped the last and said, I'm going to gallop all the way to the line. And fingers crossed, he's well on his way back to probably as good as his grade 1 performance. But that's not come through a lot of hard work from my entire team, and my vet Stuart Williamson has been an integral part in getting him back. So no, it's just, yeah, they're the types of challenges that everybody faces. Perfect. So I think we are about to round up, but I just want to say thanks for having me on, and I hope that once lockdown is lifted, we're always very welcome to visitors here. We want to showcase just how well racehorses are cared for. As I said before, here it's not like a racing yard, it's more like the ponies in the back garden. They all get the most amount of TLC you could ever imagine, and polos, carrots galore. And I think, as a trainer for future, there's nothing I would love to do more than showcase to the wider world just how well looked after horses, etc. are. So hopefully once lockdown lifts, whether it be an open day or an open yard, whatever it be, I'd love to get people in behind the scenes. And thanks for having me on.